This is the June 17th meeting of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We're going to start the meeting. I'd like all of the members to say who is here for the record. I'm Becky Bunnell, Chair.
Manish Chan.
Rick Jablonski, member.
John Dilly, Vice Chair.
Carolyn Camlet, alternate.
Charles Abercrombie, member.
John Fallon, member.
James
We
Posey,
have-
member.
Thank you. And then we have a member of the public, Dick Mahusky. We are missing Keith Bradley, who will not be joining us. He let me know he could not come. So we have the option to have one of our alternates step up to become a full member for the purposes of voting. I think last time you did, right? So I should have Manish maybe this time. So I'd like to make a motion to have Manish step up to be full member for the purposes of any. Oh, anyone second? All in favor? So be it. Okay. Thank you so much. So I'd like to start the meeting with a call to order and go to item number 1, which is to hear, consider, and act upon the minutes of the May 20th meeting. I had a few changes. I'll just read out what I had, and then if anyone else has any edits, please speak up. James' last name is spelled wrong several times in the minutes.
Thank you. That was my edit as well.
Chuck should be moved up to members absent. And the only other two ones I had was.
I'm sorry, can I have the correct spelling of the last name, please?
Sure. That's Pozzi. Yep.
The one suggestion I have for an amended edit would be on point 3, the second paragraph that starts Becky Bunnell would like the firm to do a risk analysis. The fourth sentence down, what is the damage between the elevated and non-elevated homes? I think what I was trying to get at with that was what is the risk and cost assessment difference between an elevated versus a non-elevated home? And then I had an edit on point number 4, the first bullet. I think it's in the sentence that says also future POCDs will have to take certain additional flood information into account, and in a FEMA area, homeowners could not increase the square footage of their homes. I'm not 100% sure of that, so I think my understanding is I haven't spent a lot of time on
Qualifiers in the statute.
Yeah, I haven't spent a lot of time, but I think there might have been some, and you'd said that there might be a taking if they did that.
I could see somebody taking an action, claiming it as a take.
Yeah, so I think maybe we just say at this point, I'm not 100% sure that that's exactly the way it's framed. We need to really understand what it means and how they're proposing to do that. So I would just take out homeowners could not increase the square footage of their homes, that part of the sentence. Otherwise, I would.
And it after the word account.
Yeah, actually, that's good, yeah. So maybe end that sentence after the word information into account, period. And lose the rest of it. And Drew, I'll give you my piece if you want. So those were my suggested edits. Did anyone else have any suggested edits? Oh, thank you. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as amended? John, and then a second, Manish. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Abstained. So moved. All right. Everyone approved except for an abstention with Chuck.
Right, but is Carolyn a full member?
I didn't vote.
Right, so I was just counting the
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
All right. I'm going to move us on to item number 3, which is an update on the Master Flood Mitigation and Resilience Plan. So I did reach out to the town to try to get an update. It's been over 6 weeks. We were supposed to have a team meeting every 6 weeks. I have not gotten a date from the town. I also reached out to the town to try to get a date for the site visits, because I know some people wanted to go to the site visits, and unfortunately I've not heard back on that either. So at this point, I will plan to keep following up, and when I can get those dates, get them out to you guys so you can put them on your calendar. I think last time Keith was the only one who really was determined to go on a site visit. He wanted to do the Rooster River site visit. I did pass that along to Eli, so he is aware of that. But I have not heard back whether they've scheduled that date or not.
They didn't want us to be there.
They don't want large amounts of people there. They were very clear on that. This is a working meeting for them. This is a meeting where they can actually take measurements and really get stuff done. That being said, when they did say that, Keith's information that he had given about certain sites was valuable to them. So if there is positive information that we could give, I'd like to have that be an opportunity. But we certainly cannot send more than one person on any of these site visits. And they'd probably prefer we didn't go, honestly. The one thing I think that I will say on this section is that in the charter revision, one of the things that the charter is doing is they are going to be assigning a town staff member to attend each board and commission. So we will actually have a point person, assuming the charter gets approved, we will have a point person who will be able to, from the town standpoint, be able to update us on all of the active projects going forward, and we won't have to keep reaching out to Bill Hurley and Eli for information. So I don't know who they will assign, but I'm going to ask that they assign, I was originally going to ask that they assign the town engineer, because I think these are mostly engineering projects, but if the capital projects group is the one that knows what's going on, and maybe we need to get someone from the capital project. So I'll talk to the town and figure out who is the best person to give us the best informational update, which is really what we're asking for. So that wouldn't be till November, when the charter presumably would get approved, and we could have a point person who would really be able to update us from the town. Any questions or comments on item 3?
So just for point of interest, the site visits were supposed to, if we were on track time-wise and didn't have whatever's happening. They really would have been May, June, July at the outset.
Yes, but we'd also shifted the timeline back because we didn't get them information in a timely manner. We were supposed to, they'd asked us for information about for example, input into the modeling, which scenarios we wanted to run. And that has nothing to do with site visits. So the site visits could have been concurrent with that.
Right.
And I think they didn't get us the site visit map. Last time I shared what they'd given us for the site visit maps.
Right.
So that would have been the earliest they would have done it. Once they got approval of those site visit maps, that's when they would have started to schedule them. So that was in the May meeting. So we've probably shifted, I'd say we've lost about a month and a half on this project, I think at this point.
Is there any cost implications yet, or that?
Not really. The only other two things I will mention is that I did ask both Eli and Bill Gerber to release the Penfield sketches that were done as part of the original Penfield Resilience Project, so that we could evaluate those and make a determination whether we felt other sketches needed to be done. And that would be technically out of sequence of the way they had done their project plan. But since that had already been work that they had been working on, I didn't feel that that was inappropriate. And frankly, with hurricane season coming up, I think it is actually prudent to be looking at the Penfield sketches early. So I have not heard back on that either, and we'll get back to you when I do hear.
What happened with the notice of violation?
I asked for the update on the notice of violation as well, and have not gotten any of it.
Find the money to come and do it?
I don't know. I will say that if you've been reading the news about the FEMA announcements, the Trump administration is it's unclear to me exactly how much of FEMA is being disbanded, but their plan is after the hurricane season, this 2025 hurricane season, to basically disband a lot of, if not all of FEMA, and shift funds to the states. Those funds would be allocated by the office, from what I've read, would be allocated to the states as needed from the Office of the President, which seems like an odd way to do it, given that this is a specialized agency that specializes in disaster relief. I don't know the implications for our flood insurance plans. I don't know if that'll be impacted. I don't know if that'll go away. It's unclear to me, and I think a lot of people, what exactly the administration plans to do with FEMA. So one of the follow-ups I'd like to do is kind of look into what we can figure out. I mean, I think things are so changing, and I'm assuming there will be lawsuits from states because that plan places an undue burden. And maybe it's the right thing to do, but an undue burden certainly on coastal states, but not necessarily, because disaster relief goes out to wildflowers, fires, it goes out to flooding on riverine flooding, which can happen anywhere.
Ask Arkansas from last week.
Yeah, and Vermont, inland state, massive stuff, flooding. It's not hurricanes, tornadoes, middle of the country. I mean, FEMA touches everyone, and it needs to be deployed with experts quickly, because that's when they need the disaster relief. It doesn't need to get hung up with, oh, how much do you need? Excuse me. A little cough. Excuse me. Anyway, I don't have unless anyone else has any better information, I do think we need to understand what exactly the implications are for the town going forward, in terms of certainly our flood insurance plan, certainly the BRIC grants have already gone away. Other grants may follow, as far as I know.
Back it up just a little bit. I have been in contact with Frank Myers about the NOV.
Oh,
He's researching it. He's not really familiar with it. He's researching it. I also offered as potential resolution. I don't think that FEMA would go for it, but if they would accept a third-party review, I offered my services to provide that at no cost to the town. Whether they'll accept the third-party review or if they need to see it, but they can't hold us hostage forever by saying we have to see it, but we can't come down there. There's got to be some resolution.
Do a video conference and have a surveyor.
iPad.
We'd have a
FaceTime 'em.
surveyor instrument. You do the video of the survey. To show.
I mean, there's got to be a resolution.
Yeah.
They can't hold us hostage forever.
So
What's the implication of this? Like we paying more in the insurance, or what's the implication of them not coming down and?
if they hold right now they've given us kind of a grace period. When a town has a violation, the town is at risk of losing. Right now, we have a reduced insurance premium for everyone. We're at 8, which I think is about a 10% reduction
10%.
of all of the flood insurance policies across town. And if the violation were to continue and they didn't give us this sort of dispensation, if you will, which they've kind of said, okay, we know you're doing the project. As long as you keep doing the project, it's okay. But if they were to call it, if you will, and say, you've still got a notice, that would mean that we would be kicked out of that program and have to reapply.
Not just the pavilion insurance, everybody's
No,
insurance.
everybody's the whole program. But they have said, as long as you continue to move forward, as long as you give us updates, as long as you show us that you're making progress, we will continue to kind of hold off on canceling the program as long as that's happening. And since this is coming from them, not us, I would expect they would continue that.
Does it prevent us? I thought it prevented us from doing more things at the beach that we want to do. So that's lifted.
It does because of our choice, of our administration's choice not to do anything. That's an internal.
Yeah, so I want to clarify, and I was going to bring this up anyway. So on the NOV, and that's great that you're doing that and that you offered it. Thank you. I did speak to First Selectman Gerber about us being able to get access to those drawings and also begin to conceptualize other things around that beach. He said we just can't put a shovel in the ground. They won't put a shovel in the ground until they have the NOV. So he's standing pat on that. But he said if we want to get together and talk about it, we should be doing this and we should be conceptualizing that. That was what Bill told me.
Get costs presumably and deciding.
And he thought, just like you articulated, it should be part of the overall plan, but maybe prioritized because of the season, right? And so he would think that the same people are thinking about the same issues, but we need to get to them and meet with them, but we can't get a meeting and we can't get site visits and all that kind of stuff, so, but I
But
did.
Eli is aware of that. That was in my letter to him. I said
Absolutely.
we
So,
wanted to do
I
that.
just
I
want to
said
let
we-
people know that I did speak to the first selectman, and he did say, yes, we should be talking about this and thinking about what could be done. We're just not going to put shovel in the sand or do anything until we have an NOV release. That was the last time I talked to him, and that was 3 weeks ago when or
At least 3 or 4,
when I
right?
texted you about it, yeah,
Yeah.
when I talked to him. The other point I wanted to ask was about this charter revision. Would the person that is being added be, it sounds like we're gonna try and get somebody who can actually give us information, but how are they gonna, is it gonna be any staff inside of town hall? How are they identifying who's gonna go to all these boards and commissions?
Well, a lot of the boards and commissions actually have staff members. So Solid Waste and Recycling has John Cotel attend all the meetings. Inland Wetlands and Conservation have Bill, Tim Bishop attend. Parks and Rec meetings have Anthony. So I think, I would say probably, I don't know of every, like, I don't know if Harbor Commission has one or Shellfish Commission. I mean, I'm not sure which ones do or don't, but a lot of them already have a staff member. It would be,
Okay.
it should be the most appropriate staff member
Right,
who
that's my
is
point.
working on some of our projects.
Mhm.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah,
If they got liaison.
yeah, I mean, we had Bill coming here fairly regularly when he had the time and he had the updates.
Well, Bill used to give us updates by mail, but lately he had a little bit of a medical issue, so he's been out, he hasn't responded. So I usually send him a note about a week or two before the meeting to say, hey, can you give us an update? And at this point, I think he's just got so much going on his plate right now that he hasn't been able to.
But I don't know, if we can get somebody here who can talk to us about
It would
the
make sense.
majority of our projects, or at least the ones that we're prioritizing, that would be useful.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
Anything else on the master plan? All right, item 4, to hear, consider, and act upon any other business which may come before the board. So I had a couple items, but does anyone else have items that they want
I just have one thing. I was pushed from today's Harbor Management Commission meeting to talk about the resiliency project. We don't have a lot to talk about, so I'm okay with being pushed. But at least the original talking points, they pushed me to next month. So I was supposed to go today at 4:30, and they contacted me and said the chair would not be there. Could you come next month?
Okay.
So I'm still trying to do that. I am on the docket for, what was the other one? Shellfish and, that you asked me.
You were Harbor and Shellfish.
Oh, Harbor and Shellfish, yes. I'm on the docket for both of them. I did talk to John about that as well, for next month. But again, timeliness, there's not much to report at the moment, other than the original talking points, which is still worth telling them.
We got some feedback back from the Inland Wetlands and Conservation that they'd like to meet with us. I had talked with Tim Bishop about maybe having a subset of his group, since they're very invested in flooding and inland wetlands. It really has a good handle on it, and I want us to be working together as commissions and boards. And he's very open to having a small group work with us. We just have to follow up and meet.
So we're not meeting tomorrow night.
I don't know if we're on their agenda or not.
Okay.
I didn't hear, you know what, let's.
It works for me if we don't.
So I shouldn't push it. All right, so let's,
As far as, just going back, as far as flooding goes, Fairfield Conservation and Inland Wetlands have been at the fore of stormwater mitigation going back for at least 45 years.
and they've had some interesting, they've done some interesting work. I mean, even with just students and stuff, they had students come and look at 10 flooding sites in the area and do one small project on one of them. And so they're actively working in this. And I really,
Sometimes overzealous, but they've been active for at least 45 years that I'm aware of.
yeah, but so I think we should be engaging at probably that commission more than any other. And I think as we get into actual plans, Parks and Rec, which is the one your point person, they're going to need to approve anything we want to do that touches their space. So we'll need to, once we get sort of drawings done, we'll definitely need to go back and get some time on their calendar and talk about what we're trying to do. I also want to understand some of their drawings. I mean, they've got boardwalks going over marshes, which I'm just not sure how I feel about that.
You might want to take a look on Milford, right along Milford Point Road, near the Audubon. They just put in a boardwalk because the road's kind of on the narrow side and not conducive to pedestrian traffic. And they did have to elevate the road because it did have periodic flooding. It just, they just more or less completed it this spring.
So that's a pedestrian and bike boardwalk?
I assume bikes can go on it also. I think it's intended primarily for pedestrian. And it goes right over the fringe of the salt marsh and overlooks the Housatonic into Stratford.
This seemed like it was more just viewpoint boardwalks as opposed to functional boardwalks.
This one's got both.
Yeah. Okay.
Where are these? I mean, not to get
This
into
was
it.
in the conceptual drawings that Parks and Rec did for their master plan, and I think I sent it around to all of you. I can resend it if you want.
That'd be great.
They were conceptual drawings.
Any particular place though they're talking about doing
They had
that?
them in the Ash Creek area, I think along the upper part of, not within Ash Creek, but sort of the Ash Creek tributary that goes into Ash Creek.
If I'm down in the area, I'll take some pictures and email them to you.
Of Milford? Yeah, that would be good.
The Sands Boardwalk is.
Nice.
Was that a state project?
Somer Sands Estate.
Yeah, no, I know it was a state project. I didn't know it was the town.
This other one is City of Milford.
So the next item I had was, Chuck, you had said that when you got back from your travels, you would be willing to help do kind of just a review of Senate Bill 9. And no, I mean, no real rush, but I would like to send that out in our next newsletter to our members, just to say, here's what Senate Bill 9 was passed, here are the implications for our town. The FEMA we talked about, secretary. Last time Carolyn had offered up the option that if a full member versus an alternate wanted to be the secretary, she would be happy to step down as secretary, feeling that it might be better to have a full member be secretary. So I want to put it on the table again, now that people have had a chance to think about it. Would anyone like to step up and be secretary?
If nobody else wants it, I'll do it, but whatever. If you need it, sure. But if somebody else would rather do it.
Nomination.
I thought you were saying, no, I want to do it.
I'll second it.
I'm in favor.
There you go.
I can't vote, so.
Are you seriously are okay with it?
I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that much to do, is it? I mean,
No, and you should have a conversation with Prue and Becky as to sort of how it works. It really is more of a, just sort of a being available kind of thing, but, yeah. But Prue is great with the minutes and did that, so, but that's.
So why don't Prue and I have an offline conversation with you, and we'll talk about sort of how it works today, what's working. So thank you for stepping up. Oh, I should vote. All in favor? Okay, so moved.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for stepping up. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about was Misha. We have an intern, high school intern, who is working on creating a GIS mapping of elevated homes in the beach area. He had, I think I mentioned last time, he had a lot of school stuff he had to do and really couldn't start until recently, but he did start in early June. He's trying to do a couple hours a day. He says it is relatively time consuming to enter the data into the GIS mapping. I wasn't aware quite how time consuming it is, so, because I'd offered to drive him around. And he said, but actually walking's better because by the time I type everything in, then I can walk to the next house and start over. So I will circle back with him and see how he's doing, but
But it seems to be a one-person job at this point.
it seems at this point, he decided, the only thing is if it's a rainy day, I said I would be happy to drive him around.
Right, or if I'm around, I've got you too.
what's the area? Is it like, I mean, how?
The intent was that obviously we have a floodplain. There's 3,000 structures, if you look at the total floodplain, which is basically all of the beach area.
Like all south of the post road? Is that
Pretty
what
much
it is?
south of Old Post Road, but yeah, but actually, depending on how you define the floodplain, it does go above the post road in more intense storms. So the intent was, and we talked about this sort of risk assessment group, who you had agreed to be on, and James, we had put your name up to be on it as well.
Yeah, I saw that on the minutes. I'm happy to partake and to learn more about the discussion too.
Yeah, and I think the idea was that what we really want to understand is if we do nothing and we, get a big storm, what is our, damage assessment, if you will? Particularly understanding that an elevated house is going to have less damage than one that is on the ground and has not been elevated. And how do we assess that? How do we decide what the valuation is of an elevated versus a non-elevated? And working with our tax assessor, we obviously have, all of the assessed and appraised values of of every single house. And it's not just houses. I mean, there's town properties, there's churches that are all within this floodplain. There's, I think, 6 churches, there's schools, there's historic houses. So it would be really looking at, within the total floodplain, what is the damage assessment of those particularly non-elevated houses? And then do you put some fractional assessment on an elevated house? Because there would be some level of damage, but what would be the fractional assessment?
Well, if it's designed correctly, it should be cosmetic damage only.
If it is, yes.
And so, yes, I'm happy to partake in that committee too, and or subcommittee. I'm interested in the tax assessment. Do we have basement data? Because that's really where the damage is going to be. Do we have that information, or is that getting collected by the high school intern?
When you say basement data, which houses have basements and which don't?
Correct, and finished, partially finished.
I don't believe we capture that. Although, you know what? I bet it would be on the field cards.
Yeah, that's what I was going
You'd
to
have
say.
to go in, and probably look at every field card to find out, because they give finished space,
Right.
then they give deck space. I don't know, do they give
They do.
basement space?
You do? Because I just got that letter. I got the revaluation letter. It had the difference between upstairs and unfinished and finished space below ground.
They do,
I
okay.
think it had a different delineation on the letter, as I recall.
Yeah.
And if they sent out a form letter with that, it's not just a field card. Somebody's got a data file somewhere. Right?
I wonder if we could talk to the assessor, or the tax assessor may have it, yeah.
You got a file. There's no way they're pulling it out of cards and filling out those letters and sending them to us. It was a mail merge of a data file and a form letter, so.
Okay.
So this exercise is like a macro exercise. It's not to identify houses that aren't up to
No.
certain levels and say they should get assessed something more because they're not high.
I think it's something we put in our back pocket and hold on to, and we use this to say, if we don't do some of the things that we're talking about in this resiliency project, this is the potential damage that can happen to this massive floodplain we have, massive part of our grand list, things like that. That's what I think.
What will be the impact to the town in terms of tax collection?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we would do it on an individual house basis, but the intent would not be to single out
Yeah, you
houses.
say, hey, this house is a problem. Yeah, we're coming to you.
The intent would be to show, as a town, this is what our
Exposure is, potential
Yeah.
exposure is.
And exposure at the historical house level, at the residential level, at the commercial and or religious
Yeah.
and
It's
town.
almost like once we have that data from the high school student, I think we'll have to kind of create an Excel spreadsheet saying,
Well, GIS can spit out an Excel spreadsheet, I
Okay.
believe, with that. But the tax assessor also can give us an Excel spreadsheet. And
Right.
we can I'd ask for data at one point from him, and he can actually pull columns for whatever value we ask
Got it.
for. So if there is a value of a basement, finished and unfinished, we could probably have him pull that.
The question is, if we have that, do we need him to go do this drive around, walk around assessment?
Well,
He's doing elevation, right?
he's doing elevation only,
but shouldn't that addition be there, field card somewhere, or?
not necessarily.
Necessarily.
Not necessarily. I mean, we could pull it from, planning and zoning should have a database of every, and building department has a database of every house that's elevated, but they did something 3 years ago and it was 123 houses. I guarantee you there's a way more than 123 that have been elevated since then. And I don't think we've been keeping it. So what I would like to do is, and John, were you on that too, or was it So it was
James, myself, and I think, Caroline, were you there or no?
someone, I thought there was one other person that said they wanted to be part of it.
I said I would be glad to, because I would also help, Misha or whatever, but either or both, I'm glad to help, yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do is have someone kind of be the chair of this subgroup. So start to get meetings, get a sort of a scope to your project, start to meet with the tax assessor, figure out what exactly can be done easily and start to work on that. So who would like to step up and run that?
I can do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
I probably need some guidance, so I'll connect with you.
I'm happy to give you my suggestions, but there may be things that the tax assessor would suggest that would be much better than even what I can suggest.
Okay.
So my suggestion would be to meet with him first, but I'd be happy to give you, my thoughts.
Since I'm new, so we just three of us meet separately once in a while? Is that how
Yes,
it will? Okay.
exactly. Just, you have everyone's emails, right? And
Yes.
just get people together and just say, so what should our scope be? And probably meet with the tax assessor, say, what data do you have that we can easily assess? Okay.
Or building department.
Possibly building department. I'm,
Tax assessor may be fed by,
yeah, I think he's probably got the best database, the tax assessor, would be my sense,
the
but.
letter was spot on. I went out and measured stuff. When I got the letter, I measured it and it was spot on for my house. So,
Well, that probably does come from planning and zoning and building, because you had to have filed permits.
This is the new reevaluation.
Did
Did
you-
anybody else get a letter? I didn't get a letter
I
yet.
got a letter saying I think they were gonna come around if they wanted to, vision appraisal or something.
Yes.
So I got a single letter, and on the front was a form letter, and on the back was a high-level drawing, and
I
then,
think they only sent that out to suspected violators.
oh, you got one too? No, I actually saw some dads talking about it online and Facebook too, saying they had received it as well. It was not a thick envelope,
think I
it was a
received it.
single page from
Well,
the town.
that's all part of the process.
Yes, yeah. But they also did say about coming out. Someone may have to come out and do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see any picture, at least that I recall. I thought it was
Yeah,
just,
no,
we're updating it, we might come by and look at what's
I
going
didn't
on.
get anything.
So I looked at it, went out, measured it up, and yeah, it was right. And they said if you could drop it, that somebody was complaining they didn't give an envelope, so people have been dropping them off at town hall.
I've got one, I don't know if it's a suggestion or not, I'm not part of this little group, but I'd be interested, like, can we, when you guys get together, figure out what it is, can we almost do like a dummy analysis, just to show what we think we're gonna show, or try to show, and see if that makes sense? Like, I'm still a little fuzzy on
The thesis sentence.
what the real output's gonna be. I get what it costs and all of that, but as I said last time, who's paying that cost? And what's the cost really gonna be to the town? And I think you guys had said, well, it's because people might abandon their house, or they might do whatever.
Yeah.
But, I think for that, then,
What percentage of
we
people
could
would actually
do,
abandon?
we could do some dummy analysis on it to say, if 50% abandon their house, which they wouldn't, whatever, just to see whether going through all this analysis makes sense. If the numbers aren't gonna be, if it's not gonna go one way or the other, that's all.
So why don't we do one thing, when three of us meet, we'll kind of create like a plan of what data we want to use and what we want to spit out as the output, and then get your feedback.
There actually
Yeah.
might be data that would give you a starting point out of Sandy. Because there's gotta be,
Yeah.
because there were huge numbers of houses that were damaged beyond repair. But there were certainly, at that time, there were elevated houses that sustained minimal or even no damage. And that's something that somebody related to Sandy should probably be able to,
Emmeline would have that data.
probably be able to crunch those numbers pretty quick to give you at least a baseline to start with.
The example I gave last month that I think would help me understand what is our risk assessment is, and James, you might know this better than I do. My understanding of Miami is that huge sections of Miami right along the coast, the real estate values have gone down over 14%. And that was as of a
Read
year
that
and a half
article.
ago.
Saw that.
And so it may have gone down even more. So if we were to make a calculation of what would, if houses in our floodplain go down because of sunny day flooding, let's say, or because of I mean, it doesn't have to be a damage, it's just if they went down 10%, what would that do to the grand list? That's the kind of data I think we want to bring back to the town and say, listen, if we don't protect this area, this
But
is.
to your point, we do have some history after Sandy. Did they go down or did they go up? It's, I mean, in the long run, when they went up, right? So anyway, that's all I'm saying is that I get the damage to the house aspect of it. I just don't know the analysis we're trying to do of
Well, I don't know how we,
benefit versus no benefit, car.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're gonna have to make some
It's a
assumptions.
private cost versus a town burden.
That's right, exactly. That's what I'm struggling with.
I think the
No, I
question
think
will
the
also
town version
be,
is the tax base. If they go down
If
to.
it goes down.
Let's say they go down 8%, maybe not 14 with Miami, I don't know. But that's a huge hit to the town.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying.
That's not a private.
Will that happen? Did that happen last time? What would it have to happen to make it? Oh, I understand. I'm
Well, I
just,
think that's what that's what this group is gonna have to do, is what assumptions would you make to have something like that happen to our town? What assumptions, if your road was impassable because of sunny day flooding every high tide, what would your?
is the occurrence
Well,
happening at a
hopefully,
regular
those are the
interval?
those are the places that people want to build their houses. I don't get it, but that's.
But the reality is, that's gotta
Yeah.
impact your real estate values. They're gonna wanna be in a place, because there's some roads that won't flood. So those valuations will stay high, and the ones that flood regularly, I have to believe are gonna go down.
They're starting to show it on Zillow. Functionality on Zillow
No,
now.
it went up.
Shows your flood risk.
Well, just as an aside, we got our,
Completely undeterred.
our flood insurance renewals comes in July. Ours is elevated, and we still went up markedly.
We went
And-
up 20%.
Yeah, we did too. And when we called, our person was checking it, we called some other, and one of the guys Lee called, said FEMA is not just looking at elevation now as one of the precautions, but everything else that's going on around your town or where you are located and all kinds of, because it wasn't just the elevation, as my husband said, we're at the 500-year, we're 15 feet up, for God's sakes. We can't go much higher than that, and we went up. It was shocking. Our flood insurance is now 900.
It's 1,300.
But yeah, well, here you go. But yeah, but when we,
Mine went from 4 to 500, I felt pretty good.
yours 4 to 5, well, see, that's why we were
And that was
panicking.
20%.
But ours is 900 now. It's like, how could this be? And the guy said, look, they're not just
Well,
doing,
FEMA 2.0 was looking at a broader
Yes.
set of variables.
One of the bigger changes with the NFIP 2.0 rating was, typically insurance rates on the limit purchase, which the maximum is 250,000 for the dwelling, which was actuarial sound. But what FEMA started doing was looking at that limit relative to the size of the home's replacement cost of the dwelling. So if you think about 250,000 limit relative to a $250,000 home, it's going to take a lot of flood to damage that entire home. But a $250,000 limit against a $2 million home, it doesn't take that much inches of water to cause a total loss relative to the limit. So what FEMA started doing was, rather than rating just against the limit purchase, they said the limit relative to the home value, and that shifted pricing to higher values, which I'm certain Fairfield is disproportionate in that as well. So that could be also driving some of the rate increases in our town.
So a question for you, because the way we look at our house appraisals in Fairfield, and I assume other towns, is there's a land value and there's a house value. Down at the beach, the land value is the millions of dollars and the house is hundreds, not even.
So they
They look at
typically in insurance, it's a separate value from market value, which would cost to purchase a home, which is going to take into account the land value as well. And then you have the tax assessment value. For insurance purposes, we typically we look at the replacement cost, the amount of dollars to rebuild that home. Ultimately, the amount of dollars it's going to, if the home burns down, that's what you're going to replace rather than the land you don't insure. So FEMA is looking at replacement cost of a home, and they ping a third party vendor called CoreLogic in order to get that value.
Good, thank you.
But it's looking at square footage, costs, typical labor and building costs in that area.
Square footage per
do
building.
not tell Lee Camlett you're only 4 to 5, because he was flipping. because
But
I
Becky,
can't have that big a house and bigger than your house.
Becky, I did have a question, that it's really good discussion we're having on this subcommittee and measuring that damageability and subsequent financial impact to the town or property values. But my understanding in the master plan, the consultants are responsible for doing,
Well, they're doing something, and this is where I actually don't have a lot of knowledge. They're using something called HASIS. You might know what the HASIS is.
not familiar now.
I don't know what it is, and that is what they're proposing to do their assessment on. And I'm nervous that that won't get us what we need, whereas this, I
Okay.
feel like really would get us what we need. So I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of have a backup to their analysis, because I think I'd have to go back and look at what HASIS is.
How do you spell that?
HAZUS, I think it is.
Okay, that makes sense to me, and I think it's a good byproduct of this, having our own data set of all the homes in the floodplain too.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's actually valuable to the town as well, so I agree.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for taking that on, and I'd be happy to help out as I can, but I think our tax assessor is going to be our main point person here. The only other thing I had as a question for this group is, given that July and August are big vacation months for some people, do we want to take off one of those 2 months, or is everyone going to be around both of those months? I'm happy to keep both months active. I will personally be calling in for August, but, because I will be away, but I'm happy to
I'll
call
be here for
in.
July, but I won't be here for August.
And you won't even call in?
No, I can.
Oh, you can call in, okay. So,
So the one in August is August 19th, just so people know, right? August
yeah,
19th.
so I mean, I think, hopefully we will have had site visits by then, hopefully we will have had another meeting, so I'm inclined to keep them both, but I wanted to just get a sense of the group.
Keep July and.
And then assess August.
Is it July?
July is, it's always the third Tuesday.
15th.
15?
August is the
I won't be
19th.
good.
You won't be there for the July. Everyone else? All right, so let's keep July. In July, we'll discuss whether it makes sense to be here to take off August. If not, if there's a lot of stuff going on, we'll just keep it.
One other item. People probably have heard about this HB 5002 bill that was passed through the state Senate and House. It's around affordable housing, but it removes certain protections that the town can have with certain size dwellings, especially if they're being converted from commercial dwellings to affordable housing, and they can do it as of right. And I don't think we need to throw our hat in the ring about affordable housing. The bigger issue is if this is allowed, the impact on the infrastructure that we spend our time talking about from a stormwater management perspective or wastewater management perspective would be enormous. This fair share law, again, there's a lot of numbers being thrown around by hysterical people. So I don't know what the number would be for Fairfield. I think it's out there, but it's almost, I've seen people account, again, I don't know that it's accurate, between 1,000 and 2,000 more dwellings in this town, which that's, impervious surfaces, that's additional runoff, that's things like that, right? That's going to impact what we're trying to do on this resiliency plan. I feel pretty significantly, possibly. So I just think, it's worth people on this board taking a look, or this commission taking a look at it. At least there's some good summaries out there I've seen. If I can find one that I can send around, I will. But there's been a lot of press around it. Different people on our TPC have been writing. So the governor hasn't signed it yet. It was passed by the House, and then the Senate passed it very late, after midnight on 2 days before the end of the legislative session. And Governor Lamont has not yet signed it. So he is taking feedback from towns, individuals, groups. There's a very large lobby behind it around affordable housing, and they are trying to do transit-oriented affordable housing where they can, but I don't think that would be the only place. If it was anywhere they found a commercial building that was that could fit under 9 units, we would have no ability to say as a town, hey, that's not going to work, or this. Or they're saying they're not going to hold them to their parking lot requirements, which is not as bad for us because maybe they won't be paving more ground for stormwater runoff. So there's puts and takes on this bill, but I think it'd be worth everybody trying to find somebody that's a little even-handed about it, but it's a 93-page bill, so I'm not saying that we need anybody to kind of go parse through it, but there's some summaries out there. It'd probably be worth us to
What's
take
the
a look.
number again, John?
It's HB 5002.
Was that the one, I don't know, because another bill that passed was that we're now gonna need coastal area management plans, CAMs, for single-family houses where we didn't used to have to do that, which is gonna cause a lot more costs to a homeowner if they want
I
to.
don't know if that was in that bill.
I'm not sure if
What's
that
gonna
was
require, you said?
a CAM, a coastal area, I think it's coastal area management plan. So you
And
have.
it's gonna overwhelm staff.
It's gonna overwhelm, it's definitely gonna overwhelm staff. It's gonna be a big extra time suck, because now our planning and zoning will have to look every time there's any addition or any, new building or renovation, that needs a CAM, which anything within the coastal area now for single-family house. Before it was, I think it was optional, whether planning and zoning wanted to have a CAM, but it wasn't mandatory. Now it's gonna be mandatory. Which
I thought
is-
these things don't follow the town rules
Well,
anymore.
this is affordable housing. This is a different thing. I'm just wondering.
So
what this
HB
is.
5002 actually doesn't actually replace the 830G, which probably everybody here has heard about so far. It actually adds to it. It's additive. So in terms of enabling additional opportunities for people to build. Yeah, that's all around affordable housing, fair share of affordable housing in certain communities and things like that. Again, I think pushing towards transit oriented, but not limited to that.
But they waived it, I mean, they might
Well,
waive
CAM
the
may not have been in
CAM.
that bill. It may have been in Senate
It
Bill
may have been
9.
a different
I
bill.
don't know which one it was.
The current status with the CAM is the towns have the ability to waive CAM review for single-family residences more than 100 feet away from certain coastal resources. Bridgeport, the last I heard, and it's been a while since I worked in Bridgeport, you could be 990 feet away, 50 feet in elevation, you're still going before zoning for a CAM, for
Really?
a single-family residence. Milford has waived it.
Guilford actually.
But the reality is, once you get more than 100 or 200 feet away from the shoreline, for the most part, it's just filling in a form.
So it's not gonna be that much extra work then.
It takes time for the engineer or surveyor to fill it out, which of course translates to money that it costs the homeowner. And then it takes time for staff to go through, because I'd say probably 90% of the ones I get, even from the usual suspects, there's something that's wrong. And it's one of those things, typically it's a very small of academic interest, but if the town ever gets looked at by deep and we don't have it the right way, then we're the ones that are scrambling, not the homeowner or the engineer that provided it. So it takes a lot of detail review for even something that should be a rubber stamp. So that's gonna really put a burden on the towns if the town all of a sudden has to look at every single family residence within 1,000 feet of coastal water.
That's a lot of residences.
That's a lot of residences.
And is it only coastal water or is it any water?
Tidal, it's tidal water,
Okay.
any tidal water. And it's 1,000 feet.
So anyway, I don't, that may have been in Senate Bill 9. I honestly don't know if it was in, at HB 5002 or not.
Ring a bell. But could be.
It's just yet
I think it's
a,
a nine.
I heard that from my zoning staff.
Emmeline
just
also
last
sent
week.
something out
I
saying.
don't know, I didn't catch the bill number, but I just heard that from my zoning staff last week.
It's gonna take town resources and homeowner resources, because you'll have to pay for it. It costs money to do a CAM.
And what it's gonna end up doing is it's gonna go
Slow things
and
down.
reorient town resources from areas that might serve a better town interest to just being an administrative clearinghouse.
Have no effect anyway, it sounds like.
My personal opinion as a professional, not as the city engineer, is, yeah, it doesn't accomplish a heck of a lot other than generate a lot of paper.
It does allow the town to feel comfortable that the stormwater is being adequately managed on that property, right?
Well, that's in Fairfield, Milford, Westport, every town I'm aware of, it's, everybody holds developers to a much higher standard than the minimum standard of the state. The state, I think, has a half acre of impervious areas, their threshold. All the towns I'm aware of, if you're doing new development, you're mitigating your stormwater.
So that's all I had. Anyone else have any other new business or other things to bring up? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, so be it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
See you all in
Guys.
July.